I walk up and I like grab someone's wife's boobie and then I punch the guy in the face. And then he pulls a gun out. Well, I don't get to shoot him
No.
now because that's what it's contemplated that like
Right.
I was the provocateur. And at that point, like based on my really bad behavior, I got to say, oh man, let's not
Sorry
do this.
about your old lady.
Sorry about the titty grab.
We are the Armed Attorneys. Today we are talking about the top 5 reasons why stand your ground is so stinking important. And why is this coming up? Well, California is trying to jack stuff up, and so goes California, so goes the nation, or so they say.
So they
And,
say.
and so you got to be prepared for this stuff, to talk about this stuff, and to advocate for the Second Amendment. But before we begin, show your support for the Second Amendment by hitting that like button. We got a lobby day coming up.
We do. March 11th in Austin, Texas. If you are a Texan, go to texas.gunowners.org. Sign up. There are free buses running across the state. Get yourself to Austin. 10 a.m. Meet at the Robert E. Johnson Conference Center. I'll be there. We're going to go get some good gun laws passed in Austin.
Yeah, that's
Come on out.
fantastic. So I think the background to all this stuff, because, all right, we hear about it's Assembly Bill 1333. 3 3s.
All right.
1333.
Sure enough.
So, all right, this is making the rounds right now because it is a wild take a step back from our right to defend ourselves in the state of California. We see a lot of other states try to model themselves after this.
Yeah.
They got probably an A from the Gifford Center. I'm just going to guess that.
I'm going to guess that they have an A.
And so there's a lot of different ways we attack the Second Amendment. We attack the tools that we use to defend ourselves. We attack the law that would make, our use of them justified, because that's what the Second Amendment's all about. Being able to preserve our own lives, being able to save other people. And so I think we should go through our top 5 reasons for why we need stand your ground.
We should. But first, I would like to say that, first of all, California is just a hotbed of legislative ups. And that is not just Second Amendment related, but everything. You can see in everything that they do that your policy is not working. And so what is this? What is this? I cannot imagine for the life of me that there is some huge spate of criminals murdering innocent civilians and claiming, well, they were attacking me, I had to stand my ground. I guarantee that's not happening. And if that's not happening, what is this? What are we doing?
Well, it's you got to make people more dependent on the government.
That's the thing. It is just a proactive assault on the Second Amendment for the sake of it, for the sake of liberal politics, for the sake of just let's continue to turn the state into a fiery hellhole. I'm sorry if you live in California. You know it better than I do. I'm not trying to pile on. But so anyway, top 5 reasons for stand your ground.
All right, number 5. We said, obviously, folks, you have a right to defend yourself. And that's the backbone of all this stuff. And so it's our foundation for stand your ground.
Right. Number 4, you should not be forced to cede ground to a wrongdoer. Now, that doesn't always mean that retreat isn't your best option, but it should not come at the price of your safety. You do not let the wrongdoer have the high ground by policy.
Yeah, number 3 is not everybody has the physical ability or the opportunity to retreat, and putting up these kind of artificial barriers or, giving the jury the ability to second guess these folks, it's really dangerous to self-defense.
Yes. Number 2, and I love this one because I know it to be true, is that criminals are less likely to commit violent criminal acts if they know that you have the ability to defend yourself by standing your ground, as well as in other ways as well. But we saw this. We were prosecutors.
Yeah.
Right? We saw.
They pick their victims.
They're not stupid. They're horrible, but they aren't stupid. They pick their victims wisely based upon who they think will give them the least amount of resistance. So when all of a sudden anyone who's law-abiding is able to provide less and less resistance, guess what? Crime shoots through the roof.
Yeah. And number 1, in kind of life or death moments, hesitation, that could be death.
Mm-hmm.
And so is that saying the state of California wants self-defenders dead? Yeah, it kind of does sound like that.
I mean, frankly.
They hate you guys.
I mean, because the thing is that the reason for legal presumptions, such as stand your ground, but also any kind of legal presumption, castle doctrine, the presumption that if certain crimes are taking place, that you acted within the law and you are presumed justified. We do that because you don't have time to tear it apart second by second and decide, well, am I really going to die this second? What if I act a little bit too early? What if his intention is just to render me unconscious and then steal my wallet and leave? Well, yeah, but why do you have to make that determination? Why do you have to risk your own death to make sure that you're not like overreacting or reacting too soon to the guy who's attacking you?
Yeah,
It's ridiculous policy.
well, and theoretically, the burden's on the government to disprove self-defense beyond a reasonable doubt. But when you give all these juries, I mean, when you start complicating, adding, as I like to call them, hoops, you start adding hoops to self-defense. I like it real simple, reasonable, immediately necessary, responding to a threat. Great. Simple self-defense law. Everybody can understand this. When you start adding hoops to it, it really starts making the self-defender, I mean, it kind of shifts the burden to them, saying, hey, guess what? You need to prove additional things. It's not, the government doesn't have to disprove this, but you need to show that you didn't have reasonable safe alternatives. You were, think of all these other different conditions. And that brings us to California's Assembly Bill 1333. And this is modifying their justifiable homicide statute. This is in their Penal Code 197. I'll say overarching theme. The first thing is they're removing kind of justifiable homicide in response to a lot of different felonies.
They are. And what I'll say is, having been a child born of the 80s and growing up in the 90s, that I still to this day remember that California's homicide statute is 187. Thank you to Sublime for that. Bradley Knowles, RIP.
Yeah.
So anyway, all right, that said, so yes, so what we're doing is just making it more complicated to defend yourself. I mean, you got the time, right? When someone's attacking you, you got the time to think through these things.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, these things don't happen in just moments. But I will say, so this there's a general reorientation around defense of a person, not necessarily defense of anything other than a person. So think about breaking into a house, think about burglary, think about any of these other felonies that may have an element of force. Really, we're going to hone in on, hey, only person crimes in the justifiable homicide statute.
Correct. And you, for the love of all that's holy, you better not be able to retreat and not take that option if someone's trying to kill you, because we have completely taken all of those legs out.
This is the meat and potatoes of it. I think we should probably just read it.
Let's do it. All right, so we've got homicide is not justifiable when committed by a person in all of the following cases. Number one, when the person was outside of their residence and knew that using force likely to cause death or great bodily injury could have been avoided with complete safety by retreating.
What does that even mean? Coulda,
Woulda, shoulda. I mean, yeah, that's the thing, is that you're asking not only the defender, but also the jury to just go back in time and motion to change the facts.
Right.
Change the facts and decide what would have happened, which is just absolutely absurd.
All right, next one. When the person used more force than was reasonably necessary to defend against the danger. So this is saying disproportionate force.
Right. So unlike, let's say, Texas, where someone's trying to kill you and the jury's going to be asked, was that person trying to kill the defender? And if the jury says, why, yes, they were, then they're not asked if the defender used proportional force. They're not asked if the defender acted reasonably. They're told to presume all those things to be true and find them not guilty, because once someone's trying to kill you or do other bad things, but once someone's trying to kill you, nothing else matters. It doesn't matter if I could deter the potential killer with a taser if I had one. You are done, buddy.
Yeah, this is the first shot was fine, but the second shot was not okay.
This is anything. This is, she should have used her pepper spray first.
Yeah.
I mean, this is just, it's absolutely wild.
And we do, it is a good self-defense principle. You always want to use the least amount of force necessary to stop the threat. But this is saying, if the threat could have been stopped with anything less than what you used, your homicide would not be justifiable.
Correct. So we've got when the person was the assailant engaged in mutual combat, or knowingly engaged in conduct reasonably likely to provoke a person to commit a felony or do some great bodily harm, except in either of the following circumstances. A, the person reasonably believed they were in imminent danger of death or great bodily harm and had exhausted every reasonable means to escape such danger other than the use of force likely to cause death or great bodily injury. B, in good faith, the person withdrew from the encounter with the other assailant or assailants and indicated clearly to the other assailant or assailant the person desired to withdraw and terminated the use of any force, but the other assailant or assailants continued or resumed use of force. I'm less offended by this one because this exists in a lot of self-defense law.
Yeah.
Like, if you're engaged in mutual combat or you're the baddie to start with, you gotta try to disengage before you shoot someone.
This is an affirmative duty to retreat if you're the bad actor. And I'll say
that happens in a lot of
it
states.
does happen in a lot of cases because you think about, all right, think about you're a mere trespasser. Landowner says get off, and they would be justified in using force against the person to exclude them. Let's say they brandish a firearm. That scares the heck out of trespasser. Maybe they don't even know they're trespassing. They respond with a firearm. So there's a lot of different scenarios that.
Well, I mean, like, imagine, like, let's say that, like, I'm in a bar and I'm a dude, and I walk up to someone and
I'm a dude in a bar.
Well, that's the scenario.
Sure. Okay. All right.
I walk up and I like grab someone's wife's boobie and then I punch the guy in the face, and then he pulls a gun out. Well, I don't get to shoot him now because that's what it's contemplated, that like I was the provocateur. And at that point, like based on my really bad behavior, I got to say, oh man, let's not.
Sorry about your old lady.
Sorry about the titty grab. I'm going to go. Like that's like, and I guess in making no ultimate judgment about how that's how it should be, this is how it be in like virtually every state I know of. Yeah. So, okay. I'm assuming this moved from somewhere else in the law.
Yeah, but think about this. I would say the most offensive provision of all this is that B1 outside the residence.
Oh yeah.
Imposing that legal duty to retreat. And what is a legal duty to retreat? At a jury trial, typically jurors are told, if the person's in a place they're legally allowed to be, they're not committing some other crime, they haven't provoked the interaction, they basically haven't tricked the person into fighting them, there's no legal duty imposed on them to retreat, and that a jury is not allowed to consider their failure to retreat for any reason. Now, what do juries do with that information? I'm sure they have trouble ignoring those instructions. They're told not to think about something. Guess what? That doesn't go over so great.
Don't think about the purple elephant.
Right. And I'll say juries, for the most part, I mean, they're still going to wonder, hey, was there some reasonable, safe alternative? They still always, they can't help themselves.
Right. That is correct.
But that's different than one of these cases. A jury is going to say, hey, guess what? If this person had a reasonable, safe alternative, if they could have retreated, then, and they didn't, guess what? You have to find them guilty of murder.
Yeah. No.
So you see how the standard is pretty dangerous.
No, it's awful. It's a horrible standard. This is going to make your state and your people less safe. Congratulations, California. I'm sure Gavin Newsom is all for it.
Yeah. So we wanted to talk about this, making the rounds, but we hope you enjoyed this discussion. If you did, consider subscribing, hitting that like button, and help us fight the anti-2A algorithm by sharing this video.
And if you're a Texan, go register for GOA Lobby Day. I'll see you there. Until next time, we're the Armed Attorneys.